So today on Smashing Security's featured interview, we are speaking with Material Security's co-founder and CEO, Abhishek Agrawal. Now, Material Security are creators of a multi-layer detection and response toolkit for email. And today we're going to find out about email threats and find out what dangers they pose for organizations right now in 2024. So welcome to Smashing Security, Abhishek. A delight to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, first, maybe we could start with getting to know you. What can you tell us about your background and what led you to co-found Material Security?
Yeah, sure thing. So before founding this company, I was a very early PM at Dropbox, where I actually wasn't on the security side. I led data infrastructure groups, which kind of powered a lot of Dropbox's internal monetization and experimentation efforts. I also worked on search and a lot of the different consumer surfaces there. And my background before that is I was at Microsoft Research working on productivity related incubations. So really background was in kind of product and engineering, more focused on the productivity side. And this company was kind of a new foray into security. And at Dropbox, we had definitely some exposure to the internal security team that kind of led to some of the early ideas here. But my background's primarily on the productivity side before this company.
Right. And then, then you founded Material Security in 2017?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. And what led to that? So what was the niggling thing that you thought needed to be resolved? Founding a company is not like, easy peasy. It takes a lot of time and strategy and money and all that stuff.
For sure. Yeah. So first of all, there were three of us. So I had two co-founders also from Dropbox, and we all worked together at Dropbox. And really, it was kind of a team first thing where we knew we wanted to work together and build something. And we started kind of exploring different spaces. Around that same time, in 2017, one thing that was top of mind for everybody was the 2016 election cycle that had just happened in the US.
Yeah.
And in that election cycle in particular, there were some very high profile email related attacks. And being kind of new to the security world, we sort of approached that with, I would say, kind of a very naive, but maybe sort of fresh perspective where we're like, oh, this is kind of strange. Like we thought email security was a solved problem. It's this 30, 40-year-old app. Why is email security playing a role in elections? This is kind of crazy. And you start kind of digging at the problem and you realize that there's definitely opportunities to improve upon the current state of things. So that was the genesis, that specific problem, analyzing the election-related hacks, what could have been done better. And that really led to some ideas that once we started socializing with our immediate network, we realized that there's an opportunity here.
Ooh, tell us more about that.
So in those election hacks, if you think about what happened, someone was able to breach a mailbox. And what that does is gets them, 10, 15 years of email, because all of us, when we moved to cloud email, started archiving all this mail. We have sort of infinite storage. And if you just think about the average mailbox, it just contains all of this different type of data. In the personal setting, obviously, like my entire digital life is housed in my email. In a corporate setting, IP, financial reports, employee and customer data, just you name it, it all ends up in email. And so what we kind of got obsessed with was this idea of, well, yes, it's bad that someone got into an email account, but it's really bad that that means that they can just access 15 years of email, 20 years of email immediately. And so the first idea was kind of, can we add additional layers of protection? The buzzword is zero trust or defense in depth, but the idea is that just because I get into your email account shouldn't mean that I literally get to access everything. There should be additional layers of authentication or defense. Another thing that election hack taught us is if I get into your email account, I can go reset passwords to all sorts of other services and actually turn that email breach into now a Dropbox breach or a Twitter breach or a bank account breach. In the case of the election hacks, people got into an iCloud account where now they get text messages. So it really opens another kind of interesting point, which is email also acts as identity.
Yeah.
So not only does it have like years and years of your digital life in there, it also is your identity for a lot of different applications. And I can use that to now move laterally from an email account to all these other things. The key point here is that if I am only trying to stop bad emails from coming in, if that's the only context that I'm thinking about email security in, I'm sort of not really doing anything about the content inside email or the fact that I can use it to move laterally.
Right. So, yeah, because you're kind of saying that email is like the target.
That's exactly right. And that's what we say all the time, that it's not just the way I get in, it's actually the thing I'm after. And if you think about it only as the way in, then all of your security controls are going to focus on it as the way in, but you have to think about it as the actual target of the attacks. For example, very recently in the US, there's been kind of big nation state attacks on government email systems. Midnight Blizzard was the most recent one. Before that, there was SolarWinds, Hafnium, Storm. In all of these cases, there was not a single malicious email that was sent, but the actual target of the attacks was all of these email content repositories, right? Like if I can get into the email account of someone in the State Department, like you can only imagine how useful that is from a state actor perspective. So that sort of illustrates the problem really well, which is if there was no bad email sent, but I can get into an email account in many other ways, like I can bypass MFA, I can, install a Chrome extension that gets me access. I can convince someone to authorize a malicious OAuth application. There's many, many different ways in.
Yeah.
If I get in, what additional controls we can have in place?
I like this a lot. I like the angle because I've always thought of email as a vector, but you're absolutely right. So tell me, how does material security, a multi-layered detection response toolkit, how does it help? How does it throw it off the bad stuff?
Yeah. So on the kind of inbound detection side, we're doing honestly a lot of the same things that have been done for a while. We're just applying new techniques to them, new types of data sources. So, for example, looking for signals that suggest that it is a malicious email, things like it's a sender your organization has never seen before, or it's doing a lot of urgency in its language, even though it's also at the same time trying to request a financial transaction. And new sort of technology capabilities like AI and sort of a lot of the recent developments with LLMs are massively helpful for this problem, because at the end of the day, you're often trying to decipher kind of the intent of these emails in order to understand if they're malicious. And these language models can be very useful for that, along with just, basic heuristics that you can apply if you can process a lot of data. On the side of more techniques to actually help in the case that an account is breached, and how do you protect the content inside, or how do you stop me from moving laterally? There, what we take is kind of a defense in depth approach. So a very simple example. Let's say that in my mailbox, I have a message that's very, very sensitive. Maybe it's got like PII or passport information or something like that. If it is older than a certain age, what Material does is it redacts the contents of that email, and it actually leaves a stub that doesn't contain the actual sensitive content. It's a redacted version of that message.
Cool.
The key thing, though, is that the user of the mailbox can still get the original contents of the message if they pass a side challenge on some factor that is very easy for them to do, but would be very hard for an adversary that had gotten into the account to do. So, for example, in the case of our customers, they're often using an IDP like an Okta or Duo. And so imagine that I get into a mailbox, I see some messages that have been redacted because they're old and they contain sensitive data. If I want that message, I press a button, I have to pass a Duo challenge or an Okta challenge. If I pass it successfully, the message is restored into my mailbox immediately via API. It's seamless. I can interact with the email as I always would in my mailbox. I'm not going to some third-party website to read my email.
Yeah.
But then after some amount of time, we're going to redact it again, so that, at rest, you're actually protecting this information. You can apply a similar technique to something like password resets. So if I go and request a password reset to my Dropbox, well, normally it would just send a password reset email. And if I'm in your account, I just use that to change the password to whatever I want. And now I've compromised your Dropbox.
Yep.
In the case of Material, what we'll do is we'll actually intercept that password reset email. And we will first make you prove again on a side challenge that you're actually the one that is requesting the password reset. If you say yes, we can deliver it as usual. If you say no, then I could be in your account, but I don't get to go change your password to Dropbox. So you can kind of take these sort of deterministic techniques and just say, hey, there's certain transactions that are so valuable that I'm not going to let you do them unless you prove your identity again. And this is really not a new idea. I mean, I'll give you a simple example. Let's say somehow you break into my bank account online. And it really doesn't matter how, but let's just say you're staring at my bank account. That's bad, obviously.
Yeah.
But now let's say that you try to initiate a wire out of it that drains the entire account. What do you think the bank will do? Like, will it just let you do it? Of course not. Instead, it makes you verify. It probably will make you re-enter your password at a minimum. Probably there will be some additional verification. But if you think about email, if I get in once, if I pass authentication just once, so if I take over a user session, or like I said, I bypass MFA somehow, or I get you to authorize a malicious app, that's it. It's game over. I have access to the entire contents of the email account. I can perform password resets. There's no additional verification. It just doesn't make sense with all of the things that an email account has and all of the different ways I can exploit it to move laterally. It doesn't make sense that we treat all messages as equal. Some of them are way, way, way higher consequence than others. And
absolutely.
And our whole idea is that those messages just deserve an additional layer of verification.
Yeah, I really, really like that, because you're right. We kind of treat every email the same. And in fact, the information they contain can make one very unimportant versus one super, super, super sensitive. And it's just sitting in the same bucket.
Exactly.
So do you have any tips for anyone out there listening to this and thinking about next steps to better protect their email and its gateway into the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like everything in security, there's always kind of infinite things you can do. There's always another risk you can cover. And I think I always advocate for like a very pragmatic approach. So the nice thing about email is that there's really only two cloud email systems that most companies are using. It's either M365 or Google Workspace. So first of all, just making sure you're fully utilizing the native email security controls that already come with the provider is step one. And you'd be surprised how many companies we talk to where we just see that they're not even properly configuring their existing security controls that they already own thanks to the email security provider. So doing an audit of those and really making sure, especially in the Microsoft side, things can be kind of intricate and they can be kind of hard to decipher all the different settings. But that's step one. I think after that, if you feel the need to supplement the email security that the native provider is doing, maybe you're still seeing a lot of things get through. That's where an API-based vendor is something you may want to evaluate. In the past, there used to be a lot of products that would make you kind of deploy inside the email delivery path. These are called secure email gateways. The modern sort of alternative to those is to actually take an API-based approach so that we're not routing all email through something else, but post-delivery, you can have something still looking for malicious emails that may have landed in a mailbox. If after that, you kind of feel that you've got those things under control, that's where then I would advocate thinking next about what do I do about some of the content in here? How can I address some of those gaps? And so to summarize, it's kind of like a maturity curve, right? Start with the basics, make sure you're actually using what the provider gives you by default, then think about supplementing with something if you're still seeing things get through. And then finally, you can kind of address the problem of content and really thinking about extra controls for messages themselves. But it's a journey, and it's better to kind of start with the basics. Having said that, obviously, my biased perspective is that if you're picking a platform to do some of these things, you don't want 3 different tools to do 3 different aspects of this. So it's best to pick one that can kind of be on that journey with you.
That's brilliant advice. Listeners, you want to learn more? Of course you do. Go visit Material Security by going to smashingsecurity.com/material. That's smashingsecurity.com/material. Here you're going to find a super engaging demo by YouTuber John Hammond. You can even request your own Material Security demo and much more. So that's smashingsecurity.com/material. And a huge, huge thank you, Abhishek Agrawal, co-founder and CEO of Material Security.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.